Hey, everybody. I am Dr. Andy Roark, and this is the Uncharted Podcast. Guys, we got an interesting one today. It's a different one. It makes me really, really happy. This is something that is like 100% in our wheelhouse, and we just don't get to talk about it very much. And so the question was from a medical director that's working for a practice group, and they are acquiring hospitals. And this medical director is like, I'm having a hard time getting the associate vets on board. Like, they're in these hospitals that used to be independent and kind of do things differently, and now they're part of a bigger group, and there's going to be changes, and there's going to be things brought into alignment. And this person's like, I get a lot of vets that are just out and out resistant, or that they're compliant, but in a passive-aggressive way. And I don't know what to do about it. And so Stephanie and I, we step in and take a shot at that. And so, guys, there's a lot here just generally about working with doctors and developing veterinarians. It's definitely as far as any sort of acquisition. I think a lot of this probably also applies if you are buying a practice and you're the new owner, because if you're planning to bring changes, you're going to run into a lot of this. So anyway, I like this episode a lot. It's not like a lot of the other episodes that we have done. Guys, I hope you'll enjoy it. I could talk about stuff like this all day long. And so it was nice to get a chance to do that. Anyway, let's get into this episode.
And now, the Uncharted Podcast.
And we are back. It's me, Dr. Andy Roark, man. And the one and only Stephanie. I can't make you love me, Goss.
I can't make you do anything, Andy Roark.
I can't make you. You can't make anybody do anything. Like, it's very challenging. I have children who are 100% dependent on me. 100% dependent on me. I can't get them to do anything. Nope. It's incredible.
Same.
Yet here we are giving management advice.
Someone decided we were adults in the room.
100%. Like, yeah.
Do you question that? I question that regularly.
I do question that. But I will say, I think that you and I think one of the things I'm proud of with you and me and the work that we have done over the last 6 or so years is, I think that we have been honest about the things that are hard and the things that and I think we talk a lot about what we try to do and how it goes. I have never wanted to be the person who's like, let me tell you how to do this. Right. Because that's not how human beings work. And anyone who acts like they have all of the answers in dealing with other human beings is either they're lying or they're wildly naive. And we're also at a place now where over the years, people ask us hard questions. These are not the easy, just ask your friend. And so, like, today's question is a great example of, like, this is a challenging, weird question. I love it, and we are here for it. And actually, I feel quite confident about it. But there's a lot of other things where people are like, how do you make the front desk person do this? And I'm like, I don't know. Oh, boy.
You don't.
But yes.
You don't make anybody do anything.
No, you don't. Because if you do, they just rebel. For example, they might get a radically different haircut and just show up with it, and there's nothing you do. Your hair looks amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
By the way.
Thank you. I was ready for something different. I know that it's nothing compared to South Carolina because I've been there, and it is gross and humid and hot.
I was just going to say, it looks like a great haircut for South Carolina.
Yes.
There's just nothing on the sides.
It is summertime here in Washington, and believe it or not, we are in our heat wave. Like, it has been high 70s. And I'm melting in the high 70s.
I'm shaving my head because the high 70s. Like, oh man, it looks good. It looks fun.
Thank you. Yeah, I was, ready for something different, and my kids are my style inspiration. And I was like, you guys, what should I do with my hair? And my daughter was like, I think you should do this. And I said, okay, let's try it. And I'm really lucky because I have a stylist who I adore and who I just sat down and said, I trust you. I showed her a picture, said, hey, I'm thinking something like this, do whatever. And honestly, so I'm not been going to her for very long, just like the last year. I've had 3 haircuts. Everyone has been progressively different, but I have just said, go for it. They are specialized in curly hair. And when you have curly hair, finding somebody who can cut it is a challenge. And so when you do,
they're boarded in twists.
Basically, yes.
They did a residency.
Basically,
Tufts.
Thank you. Thank you. You have shorter hair. When I saw you at AVMA, one of the first things I said to you was, your hair's getting a little long and shaggy there in New York.
It is getting, yeah.
But it looks very nice, and your usual short and trim.
It's man hair, it's like come on, it's man hair. I'll tell you, I had a major step backwards in the hair realm. I had a barber for years, and I went there, and it was a swanky barber. You know what I mean? Like it is
the kind where they also do like a shave and like all. Oh,
they definitely want to do a shave, but I don't grow beards very well, and so I'm just like,
you're like, just there.
I 100% took the lowest grade haircut they offered, and it was $47 by the time I was done. Right? Like they aggressively asked for a 22% tip. You know what I mean? But I was like, boy, they are really good, and they were. And then the last time I went there was just a couple weeks ago. They did not do anything wrong or bad, but the person came in, and I'd worked with them for a while, and I think that they were in a rush, and so they sat me down, and they did my haircut in like 8 minutes. Whoa. And then I was like, all right, $47.
You don't have much hair, but still.
No, exactly right. And I'm like, come on, lie to me here. Put on, you know what I mean? It's like, it's.
Make me feel like you've at least taken 10 minutes with me.
100%. Like, you've got to, if you're going to take $47, you've got to futz around, like, talk to me about the weather for until we at least hit 10 minutes. And again, part of it is like, well, if you're a master barber and you can cut hair in 6 minutes, shouldn't you get paid for it? And I go, I don't know. But I will tell you, I was not unhappy with the haircut, but when I left, I was like, I'm not paying $50 for an 8-minute haircut. I'm just not. Like, she made it look so easy. I was like, I'm going back to supercuts.
This could open a whole other can of worms that it has nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but like, let's talk about that on the flip side, because do we understand where clients come from when they look at, an exam fee and are like
100%?
I mean, I sometimes I get that when they're like, well, they touched them, but they were in the room for 10 minutes. And, I mean, how many times have we had the conversation with clients about all of the other things that go into setting those fees, and it's no different in any other professional service. But I can totally understand your feeling of like, that was what I got.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Well, I mean, if you charge $75 to do vaccines at your practice, you need to make sure that you're delivering a $75 experience for the client. Like that's it. And again, it was funny. I was fine with the vaccine I got. I was fine with the haircut, but I was like, man, that was a big investment on my part for something that, like, I don't feel like I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what the things I was expecting from. In the past, we've talked about stuff, and I felt like they have really focused on doing just a particularly good job and everything. This was kind of phoning in. But I do think that goes to as a sort of a cautionary tale of, if you are a high-end practice and you phone it in, it doesn't take much before people go,
right,
oh, there's a place around the corner. And so, I went back to sport cuts, and I'm like, hey, look, this is the size guard on the side. And like,
clip it down.
I did fine. And it cost me $20 instead of $47.
Right.
And like,
right.
And so anyway, I don't know. But it's important. Like, you cannot phone it in if you're going to be especially a high-end service business. Like, you've got to put on the show every time. So anyway, so there's that. But yeah.
Well, it's funny because I feel like we could do a whole podcast episode about that, but that has nothing to do with our mailbag.
No, not at all.
We just got started talking about hair. We got a great email in the mailbag. I think this one is a little different, so I'm excited to talk about it. It ultimately has to do with onboarding, really, but there's a medical director who it sounds like is maybe kind of working in more, they're in a corporate environment, is maybe working in more of a like local level or regional level leadership, because they are responsible for integrating and helping onboard existing vets from new practices. So this is a group that is buying practices. When they buy the practice, it comes with team and staff and veterinarians. And this person who wrote us is responsible for onboarding the vets specifically. And so they were like, here's my challenge. A lot of these veterinarians have spent their entire career in independently owned practices. They were allowed to do whatever they wanted from a private practice perspective. Like, they got to pick their drugs, buy equipment whenever they wanted, do their schedule however they wanted. Even, things like deciding how clients are handled, difficult clients, firing staff, etc. And so they were like, at the heart of it now, when they are faced with structure, and it looks different for everybody, but things like, having a specific practice management software, having HR policies that are set at a high level and rolling down versus at a local clinic level, referral guidelines, formularies for drugs, things that are carried in the pharmacy, things that are not carried in the pharmacy. Ultimately, it's a lot more structure and oversight than a lot of people are used to. And so this leader was like, look, a lot of these vets have expressed that they feel like they've lost their identity as an individual in our profession by being inherited in a corporate structure. And so they, the loss of clinical freedom, they feel like they have no decision-making power. And so this medical director was like, I feel like I'm getting constant pushback. And when I'm not getting pushback, I'm getting passive-aggressive behavior, usually compliance, but it comes with some, passive-aggressive or outright aggressive behaviors and a general sense of resentment. And so people are looking at it like, well, that's not how we used to do it. And so this medical director is like, how do I bridge this cultural divide without alienating these vets who, by, for all intents and purposes, are wonderful, experienced veterinarians, excellent clinicians, and are being exceptionally resistant to the reality of their life.
Yeah.
And so at the heart of it, their question was, how do I integrate associates into a corporate structure coming from independent practices? But really, I think it is about how do I make a professional feel like they have autonomy when there is still a structure that exists in the job world. And it's funny because when I started thinking about this, I get asked this a lot in a bunch of different contexts, because really what it comes down to is, how do I tell people they have a job and they actually have to do their job? Really? Like, honestly, right? Like a lot of, for me, when I was thinking about it, it was, how many times have I had a manager ask me, this technician doesn't want to do these parts of the job, but they want to do this part of the job, or they want to do it differently in this way. And so, we're going to talk specifically about the vets in this context, but I think that this is applicable in a lot of ways across the board to listeners. So I'm excited to get into this one with you.
I kind of agree. I think it's much deeper than that. I'll tell you, this is going to be a really good one. I'm excited to talk about this.
All right.
I'm super excited to talk about this.
Let's dive in.
Because I think that you and I are uniquely suited to really talk about this. And most people do not know this. And so I'm just going to put up our bona fides here at the beginning. This has been the fastest growing part of the Uncharted business for 5 years. It is actually probably the number one thing that we do at Uncharted is work with corporate groups on programs that are sort of similar to dealing with problems like this. And so you and I have waded into a variety of different practice groups in different locations, everywhere from here in South Carolina to we're currently working with a group in Asia right now. And so we've done this literally all over the world. And when we start to work with groups like this, we have the ability to show up. We pull the groups of doctors together and we frame it around development. So we show up, we're like, we're gonna grow and develop these doctors or these medical leaders, medical directors, however we want to break it up. But we're going to develop these people, and so we make something that's positive for them. And we focus on those connections. We focus on getting the doctors to know the doctors in the other practices and really start to try to build that social web and that support web. And I really just think that is so important. And so we start to do that. We work on talking about the mission and the values that the doctors have and that the practice has, and sort of integrating those things to try to instill that sense of meaning back when people are like, we had an independent thing and now we're part of this other thing and there's no meaning. That's not true. But we have got to help them to rediscover that meaning. And so we focus a lot on that. And then we start to bring in the upper leadership from the companies into this developmental stuff. So they're not asking for anything. They're just there participating. And that's how we start to build those relationships. We start to build some trust, all of these kinds of things. And these programs usually run 6 to 8, 12 months. And over the time they're doing these programs, we've been able to affect massive change. We see the doctor engagement scores go up and up and up. We see them improve things like time management and delegation, in role clarity, sort of understanding what's expected of them and their jobs and things like that. We have a significant increase in doctor retention for doctors that are trained by us in these programs, and a significant increase in retention of the doctors who report to the doctors who are trained by us. And so we have done this a lot of times for a lot of different companies over the last 5 years, and we're just doing more and more and more of this work. And so I want to throw that out at the beginning, sort of as a shameless plug for Uncharted, but this is a lot of what we do. And I think that you and I have seen a lot of stuff. And so I'm excited to get into this with you. Let's start at Headspace, because this is where I feel like That's where I feel like I disagree with you a little bit, just in what you're saying. You're not wrong about any of it. Don't you think, Stephanie, that this is more of an existential, event for the doctors than, making somebody do their job? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think absolutely, you're not wrong. Number one for me on the headspace was that I think this is an identity crisis, right? And I think you have to acknowledge it. And so because as veterinary professionals, we wind our personal professional identities so deeply up in what we do for work. And so I think when we think about veterinarians and we think about making the transition from full autonomy or significant autonomy as a professional in what you do every day and how you do it, to being in a structured environment that has a system and is somewhat standardized, however degree of standardization looks in that group, that could totally feel like a gut punch to someone who is like, I'm this indie rebel independent practice, and now I have been acquired or have been purchased. And so I think you have to start with acknowledging the fact that we do, as professionals, tie our identity to what we do. And for these people, that is probably pretty a significant, I don't use the word trauma lightly, but is pretty traumatic, or could be pretty traumatic for some professionals, because they're not being asked to do this.
Number one for me in Headspace is you got to empathize, because these are the doctors who were not involved in the sale.
Right.
They did not talk to the different groups. They did not think about what would be the best fit for their practice or their culture.
Right.
They got no choice. And then this thing is happening. The other thing I think you have to remember too, to your point about the identity part, is people tell themselves stories. And when people say the corporates are coming, or you have been bought by corporate,
right,
what in the world does that mean?
Right.
A lot of people have horror stories in their mind. Some of them are valid experiences, and some people had wonderful experiences being acquired, but you just don't hear from them because that stuff doesn't go viral. No one says, hey, I'm pretty darn happy with how this went. That's not interesting. It doesn't get shared. When people say, I hate it, and this is how it's ruining our profession, and this is how it's horrible, that stuff gets a lot of attention. They get a lot of sympathy. Those things get shared of, look at what's coming for us. And so anyway, there is a lot of sort of fear around, being acquired by corporate and stuff. And I think it's important. You got to accept that, right? This is a scary thing. I would also say, and this is just, an obvious thing to throw out, is change is always scary, and this is a huge change. And so you're talking about someone, they did not get any say in this change. It's a significant change. They don't know what it means. They've probably heard horror stories, all of those sorts of things. And so I think trying to empathize with these, with the doctors, and again, this is also true that we were specifically asked about the doctors. This is absolutely the same with the team. Yeah. This is 100% onboarding the support staff. They're all having this exact same reaction. And so I just think when we talk about sort of integrating new practices into an existing group, I think that's really key.
I was just say, I think the other thing from an empathy perspective before we talk about your next point was that when we think about having empathy and we try and put ourselves in someone else's shoes, when you think about making a complete systems switch from an autonomous environment to a structured or standardized environment, we're talking about the loss of things, loss of control, loss of that home feeling, that family feeling, particularly if that's how the clinic described themselves previously, the loss of the systems, right, that worked for them or didn't work for them. Sometimes this is a really good thing. And I think these doctors, we're coming at it from the negative, but I want to talk about some of the positive too.
Yes.
But I think it's really important as humans to recognize that from loss is where grief comes from. And so if we look at it and we put our empathy hat on and we think about it from a grieving perspective, we can all, working with clients, understand the grief life cycle. And this is not something that someone just finds out one day or happens. I mean, think about it. When we tell a client they come in for a visit, they're not expecting euthanasia today, and they walk out of that appointment and euthanasia was the end result. That's wildly unexpected. And think about how we treat those grieving clients. It is different, but there are similarities to that. When you think about, usually in an acquisition process, the team doesn't know until it's done. And so now we've, dropped the hammer and said, hey, this is your new reality. That's grief, friends. And we know how to deal with that, which is, I think, the good thing about this. If we change the way we're looking at it and we frame the picture for ourselves in that way, I think it becomes a lot easier to look at how do we handle people who are dealing with grief.
Yeah, I love that call out. It is sad. This is the closing of a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
The practice is not going to be the same as what it was before.
Right,
Like that's
right.
over. And often it means that the practice owner, who's been a fairly central figure in probably the lives of the people who work there, that person is going to be stepping aside.
Right.
Now, often they're going to stick around for a while.
Sure.
But it's definitely a signal that this person is almost always going to transition out.
Yeah.
Like not 100%, but almost always.
Yeah.
And so I really like that idea of, there's sadness here. I think that's, anyway, I think that's really important. I think sort of related to that, is I think our writer has to get a couple things sort of set in his or her mind. And the first one is just, I think going into this, you have to have a certain level of acceptance, right? There are some people who are not made for a corporate structure, or they don't want to be made for a corporate structure, or they have strong feelings about what it means to work for a corporation, and they're just not going to do this.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean your group is bad. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try to retain them and work with them.
Right.
But I don't want you to feel like a failure if there are some people who are passive aggressive and they stomp their feet and then they leave. I was talking to a very senior practice group leader recently, and he said, Andy, the cost of change is churn. And what he meant is any time that a practice group makes a change, someone in that group, someone somewhere is not going to like it.
Right.
You could almost give everyone a raise and someone would be like, how dare you?
Right.
And like one person would have a problem.
Yeah.
They would leave.
No, it's true.
Because and that's silly, but you hear what I'm saying. Like you could give them, whatever, make any sort of really positive change, and 90% of people will think it's great, but there'll be some person that says, this doesn't work for me and I can't be here.
Right.
And again, we're going to work to retain those people, obviously, but you can internalize that pushback or even people departing. That's not failure on your part. This is a significant change, and some people, this is not what they want, or they're not cut out for it. There's other people who would not have liked what existed before.
Right, exactly.
But they're going to be all about what you're doing, and you just have to believe that. I think from another headspace standpoint, going into these things, beware of trying to sell people on the purpose, right? If you roll into these things and you're like, hey guys, we've got big things and they're doing this stuff and it's going to be great and you're now part of this thing.
Yes.
People don't necessarily like to be sold. And so don't get me wrong here. We're going to talk about the mission of our organization. We're going to talk about where we're going, and we're going to keep talking about it. However, I'm not going to try to talk you into it. If you really hate the idea that we are the community practice, I'm not going to try to convince you, don't you like communities? Shouldn't that be great for you? I go, no, this is kind of what we're doing. One of my general rules is I try not to sell people on the purpose. If you really, if I lay out the purpose of our work and where we're trying to go, and you're like, why would anybody want that? You're probably not going to fit here.
Right.
You're just not.
Yeah.
And so, there's that. And the last thing I would say, and this kind of ties together, just general rules on doctors that I think are always helpful, especially if you're doing something like this and you're coming in, you're going to be moving their cheese, you're going to be making changes, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It always helps me to remember that doctors are essentially like fighter pilots. They're not lemmings. They don't get in a line. You know what I mean? They're not cogs in a machine. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ego. There's a lot of people who want to kind of do things their way and don't tell me what to do.
Right.
And it's not bad as long as you know that. It can be bad if you say this is the rigid system and you get in line or else. But if you see the doctors as kind of these fighter pilots who are kind of cocky and, they're super smart, highly trained, just if you can engage with them with that kind of idea in your mind, you'll probably get a whole lot farther. And again, you have to work with them a bit. And so again, just acceptance of, this is kind of going to be what it is here at the beginning. Mm-hmm. It's going to sort itself out. You can't make people love you. They're not going to fall in love with you. They're not going to immediately get in line. That's okay.
Yes.
That's the process. And when we do action steps, we'll kind of walk through the rest of it. I think that's sort of it for me for a headspace.
Okay.
Do you got anything else?
Yeah. So the only other thing I think that I would add is to your point about remembering some things about vets. I think the other thing on a human level that's important to remember is that what feels like structure and support to some people's brains feels like being trapped, micromanagement, red tape, handcuffs. Yeah, exactly. And so it takes all types. And so your role as a leader is to help those people like recognize that, at least the way I try and look at it is kind of the way I do in my personal life too, which is that if someone is at an extreme end of a spectrum and I'm in the middle, my chances of success with getting someone at an extreme end to come significantly closer to me, that's a huge uphill battle. I have a much better chance at taking the ones in the middle that are in the outliers on either side of the fringe and bringing them closer to the center, right? And so part of your assessment process should be to kind of figure out how do they each individually feel at it? Because there is something to also be said for when change happens, attitude is infectious. And so the attitude that everybody puts out, like if one person, especially if it's someone with a loud voice, is like, I hate this is crap, you're probably going to have people who don't necessarily think that it's crap lean into that as well because it's the voice in the room. So I think just remembering that that is true and trying to look at it from that perspective of it's okay, it's not good or bad that people view it that way, because a lot of it for us has to do with how our brains work and how we communicate and things like that. That's not good or bad. The only other thing that I would say is from a leadership perspective, I think it's really important that yes, your job is the tangible, you are getting them to practice clinically, you're managing systems. When you are a leader at this level, that is true. And also, I would argue that more of your job is about managing the messy crap in the middle that we usually call the soft skills, right? It's the it's the human nature of it. It's the emotions. It's the trust. It's the legacy that was here before. It's personal habits, years of personal habits, potentially, that you are trying to deal with. All of that stuff has nothing to do with the actual medicine that is being practiced. And so I think that's one of the challenges that we have a lot in, and it has nothing to do with corporate medicine, I would say with multi-site structures, because it doesn't matter whether you're a corporate or you're a single owner who has multiple locations. The bigger your team gets, the more people you have involved, the more structure you inherently need. And so you have to recognize that there is, at least I feel like my goal as someone who's worked on both sides of the coin, not only with Uncharted, but I have managed private practice and I have managed in corporate practice. And so I have seen both sides of it. Corporate standards and bigger practice structured standards exist sometimes for very good reasons. And it's also no less true that this independent practice that you inherited, they did things for a reason as well. And so your job is to kind of be that bridge in the middle of all of those things that are human. And if that's not a job that you love doing, like that's probably a whole other conversation, because we put a lot of people into leadership positions who are the systems and structure and process people. But really this role, so much of this role exists in that soft skills, messy middle piece where you're just dealing with humans. And so I think wrapping your head around the fact that is actually your job is going to set you up for better success no matter what you do moving forward.
No, I think you're right. Well, let's wrap up Headspace here, and then you want to take a break, and then we'll come back and do some action steps?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So action steps here. Okay. Action steps are usually they're a little bit tricky to talk about in the broad context, because every group is going to be different in kind of what they're asking specifically to do, and also their timeline. Like some groups are fine to not really mess with anything for a couple of months.
Right. And some are like day one, let's go.
Like we've got to go, you know what I mean? And again, so I'm like, what my preference is doesn't usually matter that much. It's more about like, well, what are we able to do, or what's the context that we're sort of working in? And so anyway, there's a little bit of that of you're going to have to kind of work with what is required to sort of bring these new practices in. But the first thing for me, and this is just kind of like the number one cornerstone at Uncharted that we talk about all the time, is it starts with trust. You are the representative to the doctors of this organization, and they don't trust you. Yes. They don't know you. They've heard terrible stories about, what corporate practices are going to do, what group practices might do, and cautionary tales. And so the first thing that I would say to you is, what can you start to do to build trust with these fighter pilots? Yeah. And start with that. And so it's usually not about rolling in and asking them for anything. A lot of times it's just, can you get to know them? Can you spend time with them or around them?
Yes.
Can you talk to them about things that aren't even necessarily work related? And can you start to ask them about what is important to them? What makes, and again, these are, we're sort of getting into sort of the second part, which is sort of the ways of working conversation, but understanding the individual doctors that you're bringing in and kind of what makes them tick, what motivates them, what their values are, what defines a great day for them and what defines a stressful day for them.
Yeah.
All of those things are important as far as sort of getting them on board with sort of the changes and how things are going. You can't set someone's mind at ease if you don't understand what in the world they worry about or what they care about.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of that stuff around trust building of, can you ask them questions like, imagine it's a year from now and this transition has gone absolutely wonderfully. What does that look like in your mind?
Yes.
Imagine it's a year from now and this transition has gone absolutely terribly. What does that look like in your mind?
Yes.
What is a terrible transition to you? And they'll tell you, like, this is, I wouldn't be able to do this, or, I would have to do these things. And then follow up with your questions. Why is that important? Well, that seems to really worry you. Tell me more about why is that a stressor for you?
Yeah.
And it's asking those questions. And again, you're not asking for anything. You're just trying to understand what's important to them, where they want to go, what they like about the practice that they're at, and also kind of where they want to kind of go in their career. Not just from like I want to be a medical director, I want to be an area medical director. Not like that. More of, I want to make sure that I have strong relationships with the pet owners. I really want to feel like I'm a supporter of the staff and that the staff is happy. Like, those are the things I'm kind of digging for. If you don't have that information about someone, it's going to be kind of hard to convince them that they don't need to freak out when their world changes.
Yeah. And I think you can do that a couple of ways, right? But I agree with you. It starts with having some conversation sessions, listening sessions, whatever you want to call them. So you can do them one-to-one, and you probably should. At least some of the doctors, particularly the really vocal ones, like doing a one-on-one conversation versus a group is probably a lot more beneficial for you. But you also can have small group conversations. And I think your point is super, super valid, asking them questions, even just honestly asking them the question of like, what feels scary to you right now? What are you afraid of? Because really we're talking about their fears. What are they afraid of? And a lot of times we're taught as managers to ask like, how can I help? How can I support? Most times people don't know the answer to that question. And so if they're being honest, a lot of them probably would look at you and say, I don't need your help, right? Because there's feelings there. So you're probably not going to get what you need by asking them how you can help them. And so I think your point is a super good one about asking them questions and getting them to tell you what their concerns are. And I think when they do, you need to shut up and listen, number one.
Yes.
And then number two is you need to validate their concerns and their fears, even if they're unfounded. You need to validate that you're hearing them, because what is the number one thing we know about upset clients? They want to feel heard. It's the same here with the team. And so even if change is necessary and you are still going to have to tell them no, or their world is still going to get rocked, the fact is empathy should always come first. And so make them feel seen and heard. That's the number one way that you're going to build trust with them.
I agree. The only thing I'm going to throw in here, because I love your questions, I'm a big fan of paired questions, which means if you say, well, what are you afraid of? Then you should also ask, what are you excited about?
Right.
What do you want to accomplish? What do you imagine is holding you back?
Right.
And so by doing those sort of pair questions of what's good, what's bad, what's inspiring, and what's demotivating, it's interesting how, you can't just pick one and get the whole answer. Like, they often are very important to sort of pair together. And so I like that a lot. You talked about talking to individual doctors. I 100% believe in talking to the individual doctors. And people go, but we're busy. And I'm like, look, you acquired a hospital. You got 4 new doctors. How important to you is it to retain them?
Yes.
The other thing is, I would say, this is an investment. You want these people to be here for years. And so I would plan to give them a lot of time up front to get them settled, to support them and everything. And then later on, you'll probably, be required, hopefully less, and you can step back. But it's amazing how many people are like, we're here. This is the amount of one-on-one time I have with my doctors. Go. And I'm like, I think you should invest into your new clinic and plan to give them of your time.
Yes.
And you have to sort of reprioritize. But I think that's important. And so anyway, so if we're talking to individual doctors, and again, everything we're saying about doctors is true for the team, Stephanie. Don't you agree?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
You need to know who your champions are. or who your potential champions are. Which means, like, I think what you said earlier is spot on, Stephanie, in that, like, there are going to be vocal people. They might not be the medical director. I have seen people, bless their heart, I have seen people who are like, well, Stephanie's on board, so we're going to make her the medical director. And I'm like, that's great. Stephanie is a deep introvert who does not say much to anybody. And so it's great that she's on board and the medical director. But honestly, Raphael is the guy that's holding court. You know what I mean? And everybody looks to see what he's thinking.
Yes.
That doesn't mean we should make him the medical director necessarily, but it does mean that we need to invest some time with Raphael and, you know, and try to see where his head's at.
Yep.
And are there things that we can do to get him on board with this? There will be people in your practice who are optimists. Now, the people who are pessimists, they will be vocal and they will talk.
Right.
Who are the people who think this might be good? And can you engage with those people, find out why they think it might be good, and try to help support them? And if you do that, then you've got some people who are going to be in the practice after you get in your car and you drive away, who will hopefully talk about, well, yeah, I can see, what about this? I can kind of see this. I appreciate where they're going. I'm not talking about getting someone who's going to sell out immediately to you and be like, yes, I'll say whatever you want. That's not going to happen. But getting some people who are interested in what might be, and stoking those fires and investing, again, time with them so that they understand what this might be and they can actually kind of answer some questions of their colleagues or share, you know, sort of share what they're excited about. That's an investment worth making. And so anyway, that sort of recruiting champions is definitely on my list of action steps.
Yeah, I think the next thing for me is a little bit headspace, a little bit action steps is, I think as a leader, you have to know what the non-negotiables are when it comes to systems and structure. And you should figure out here what the flex zones are and where the team and the clinic will have autonomy, input, be invited into the process, and then invite them, talk to them about it, let them know what to expect, and ask them to help you shape how you're going to roll things out. Because the reality is you can't come in and change everything overnight. You can try, but you're not going to have success to completely change a practice overnight. So if you're this leader, knowing what the non-negotiables are, knowing where the team has autonomy, point that out. Give them wins, help them create wins, as many as you possibly can, and knowing where they have the ability to have input, have insight, or total freedom to do whatever they want. Point that out, highlight those good things for them because they need to be able to see it. And then you're able to leverage their expertise, not have to spend your time when you're trying to build relationships overriding them constantly by telling them no, 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 no.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you say this. Okay. Bear with me. I want you to push back on me if you don't agree with what I'm about to say here.
Okay.
One of the mistakes that I see people making, and let me stop. Caveat. I already talked about the importance of building trust. I talked about being supportive of these people. I want to understand these people. I talked about empathizing with these people, all those things. One of the big mistakes that I see people make as they come into this role as a new medical director that's taking on new doctors they don't know is they're too soft sometimes, which means if you come in and you're like, what do you guys need? Yeah, I'll do whatever. Oh, you don't like that? Well, we can change this. Well, that might not happen. Well, we might not have to do this or that. What's convenient for you and how we communicate? Do you want to call me? Sure. I mean, I'll come back around.
Right.
Things are going to change. And they are.
Right.
And people are going to ultimately be held accountable to certain things. And I love that you said the immovable stones are that we're going to navigate. Know what those are. And I want to build their trust. Part of building people's trust is letting them know what to expect. Yeah. That doesn't mean giving them everything they want. Someone who folds every time I talk to them is not someone I trust.
Right.
You know, it's about trust and it's about respect. And so I think that you're spot on in saying these are the things that are probably going to happen, or this is generally how this is going to work. We're not necessarily doing it now, but I think trying to, as you're listening to them, and wait until you listen to them and you understand what they want, as we go on fairly early, we need to start setting some expectations about, you know, kind of what the ultimate sort of change is going to look like. We need to start signposting changes, which is not, you know what, don't worry. Things are going to be different, but don't worry about that. I want to have some type of a structure to tell them this is kind of what's going to happen. These are sort of the first things that we'll sort of do. And again, when I say signposting, I think it's also really good going in there. You want to have your plan in phases. I don't think you want to have a bullet point plan if we're going to do this and then this and then this, because that completely ignores the human element.
Right.
It's like, basically, it's like, I don't give a crap what you want or who's here, because this is step 1 and this is step 2 and this is step 3. But you can say,
it's your, I've seen people walk in with their clipboard and their list and think that they're just going to go down their list like human beings aren't human.
Exactly. And like I see it go both ways. And that's why I said, you've got to balance this. But you have got to do the empathy part, but also you've got to give them some structure. But I don't think you want to give them, we do this and then we do this and we do this. It can be overbuilt. I think you going in, you could even have your checklist. I think you should think of it in terms of phases and then be able to say, the first thing that we're going to start working on is our inventory system. And I like the idea of working with inventory because it generally minimally affects the whole team. Most of it can happen behind the scenes.
Right.
We're going to have to talk to them a little bit about what they're going to see this different, but there are some back-end things that we can start to change. Bill pays, credit card processing, any of those sorts of things. That stuff the team is largely blind to. If you can do that stuff first, they experience minimal impact. They're getting used to the idea, their interaction with you, the idea of being part of this organization. I do like those things, but however you want to do it, I would say have some phases around what does team development kind of look like? What does our medical quality standards look like? Things like that. But you're right, we're not going to do all these things at once. I do not want to tell them everything is going to be fine, nothing is going to change. And I also don't want to say, well, these 5 things are going to change no matter what you think, so just suck it up.
Right.
There is a middle path, and so you can make sure that they're heard. You can lean into supporting them however you can. And I think that is really important. There's no scenario where you come in, ask them what they care about, don't do anything for them, don't seem to make any concessions to them, you don't flex to them at all, and they're like, I trust this person.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen.
No.
But at the same time, there's also a problem of coming in, flexing all over the place to meet their needs and their desires and their concerns, not telling them about anything that's coming, and then wondering why they're not getting on board with these obvious things. And so it's a balance there, but think of it not as, and I say this a lot, but you're not their friend. You're more like, it's always dangerous to say this, but you're kind of more in a parental role where you're like, I like you, I care about you, I want to support you, I'm going to listen to you.
Right.
And also, unfortunately, I'm kind of in a place where I'm kind of responsible for you.
Yeah.
And I'm there's certain things that we're going to just need to do. And so you're going to have to wear pants when we go to the park. Like, you're just going to have to wear them.
I mean, it's true. And that's kind of a little bit of what I was getting at the very beginning when I said, like, at the end of the day, like, we all have jobs. And if we want to be able to go to work and not wear pants, we probably better work for ourselves versus in a veterinary clinic. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean in the sense of it is the job, and we just have to, that people just have to understand the other can do it. And so that's what I mean when I think the non-negotiables. And I love how you said that, like breaking it into phases and signposting. If you know that they're going to have to change their practice management software and they're going to have to change it in this next 12 months, tell them that at the beginning.
Just say
this is the thing that's going to happen. And we will break it down. We will break up. We will, we'll walk through all of the steps. And I just want everybody to start processing that because I know it's a big change, right? And normalizing that.
I think you're touching on a larger point here, which is a big part of the action steps too, is know what you bring to the table. Know what is good, because this is not a one-way transaction where you show up and you're taking away from them.
Yeah.
The corporate groups bring a lot to the table. And so when you say we're going to be changing practice management software, don't worry too much about it. This is software that we use at all of our other practices. We have great support for getting this up and going. Mm-hmm. We have great training for getting it up and going. We have done this transition over and over again. And that's true. And so just say it, because everyone's heard about the horror of changing PIM systems. Just say it. Another big thing, part of the action steps that I always put in here, which again, what are the benefits that you're bringing to the table? When possible, I am an enormous believer in connecting your doctors to the doctors of other practices. Yeah. If it's at all possible, get them together. Part of the benefit of being a practice group is you've got other doctors at other practices that you should be able to call on, that you should know, that you should be able to network with, that should be able to mentor you if you need. Ultimately, we'd probably like to get to a place where, I mean, again, it depends on how your practice group is set up, but ideally, I would love to be able to have some doctors move between some practices if we need them. And that's not going to happen unless you start building that social network. I mean, one of the things that people generally don't like all that much about private practice is it's a little island. And you don't necessarily get to hang out with the other vets and things as much. And so think about what you bring to the table that they do like or that is good. You know, if you said, hey, we're actually going to work with Uncharted and the gang is going to be coming in and working on professional development with you guys, and it's like, that's going to be awesome. Like, maybe you should mention that up front as one of the cool things that you do that they get to do. Just saying, maybe it would be a thing. Just mentioning that that's a thing that could happen. But anyway, in all seriousness, don't downplay the benefits of being a part of your group. I mean, there's greater resources, there's opportunities. Again, the networking is a big deal. The experience of the organization and getting things done. Like, don't overplay your hand, but also don't be afraid to reassure people and go, hey, this is not our first rodeo.
Well, and I think one of the things where I see a lot of failure here is that when it comes to integrating or rolling out policy, protocol, process, systems, whether it's in private practice or corporate practice, a lot of the times it's explained with the what. Like, this is what we're doing. It's what, you know, that the why gets forgotten. And I think that one of the things that's really, really important is if you just tell them, well, this is what the corporate structure is, so why do I care? Why does that matter to me? It's the same as if I'm a practice owner and I say, well, we're going to change our practice management software, and because I'm the boss, I say you do, get over it. If that's your attitude, you're not going to get buy-in. And so I think for me, the action step, when to your point, when you're talking about what is coming, it has to include the why. And so that can look a bunch of different ways, but, you know, inviting them into understanding why are you doing what you're doing, and helping them connect it to there's like several things that people care about, but generally helping them connect it to the patient outcomes and patient care, because they care deeply about that. Helping them connect it to team wellness and well-being and mental health and work-life balance, longevity in our careers, all of those things. We care deeply about wanting to continue to do this job. And if you can make that personal and connect it in that way, that's a lever you can pull. Or from a financial perspective, like the what's in it for me is often important. Like, how can you continue to reward them? And for me, that bucket goes even broader, which is when the business is successful, we can, as a whole, be more sustainable. That means profit at the top level, but that absolutely means better wages, more benefits, more all of the things at the bottom level as well, just in that pyramid, not in level of importance. So being able to help them connect the systems and the structure and the what you're doing to those whys is really, really important.
Yeah, that's such a great call out. One of the biggest, I keep mentioning like one of the biggest, but there's a boy, I see this screw up a lot of ways. One of the things that really screws people up here, and this is to our writer, who is the medical director, who is responsible for sort of onboarding people. A skill that you better have is you better be able to speak 2 languages. You better be able to speak operations, and you better be able to speak medicine.
Yeah.
And if you really want to screw this up, you send someone who only speaks operation language into the new hospital, and they're going to go in and they're going to start talking about KPIs and average client transactions and patient numbers and top line growth and blah, blah. And the team is going to immediately vomit in their mouths.
Yes.
They are going, like, because that's what they're afraid of, that like no one wants to work for a hyper capitalist, vet clinic. Like they don't want that. And I also understand those are the metrics that this person writing to us are probably going to be held to.
Yeah.
She's probably going to get held to, hey, what's the average client transaction?
Right.
What are the patient numbers being seen?
Right.
Like that's how the operations guys talk. And again, those are important things for running a healthy business. Those things do not motivate the medicine-focused people on the ground. And so you need to be able to understand what the operations metrics are that you're being held to.
Yeah.
And then you need to understand how to talk to the medicine people about how those operations metrics actually translate into care on the ground, and talk to them about accessibility, talk to them about patient care, talking to them about positive medical outcomes, talk to them about supporting the communities, talk to them about the things that they care about, because they are not showing up at your clinic to increase the top line number. That's not why they're there.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I really think that you're spot on about that changing the way that we're talking about. So the last thing for me. Oh, sorry,
Nope, go ahead. I was gonna say my last thing. So you go for it.
The last thing for me is around setting expectations about what your role is going to be in this hospital.
Okay.
And this is this is for medical directors and people who are responsible for developing doctors. I think the whole team applies to the whole team as well.
Yes.
I think doctors are worse. If you let the expectation be set that you're just going to kind of show up whenever, and if the doctors are available,
you can talk to
them. Will talk to them,
Yeah.
or they will talk to you.
You'll never talk to them.
Then you're in for a hard time. Like you just are.
Yeah.
And so this goes back to my, there are some bedrock things.
Right.
And this doesn't come from above. This is my advice to you.
Right.
From the beginning, if you want to be successful,
set the expectation.
Figure out what your communication cadence with these doctors is going to look like.
Yeah.
And make it happen. Now, that's so easy to say and hard to do. The simple rule that I would put forward is figure out, are you meeting with these people? Are we doing one-on-ones? Are we doing them once a month?
Are we doing a doctor's meeting all together?
Are we doing a doctor's meeting? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes those things are not going to work out because schedules are going to change. There's going to be an emergency, things like that. My advice is, the doctor's meetings, I would try not to move them. I would be like, you're expected to be here, and
set in stone.
This is set in stone. For any sort of one-on-ones or things like that, I am okay with the idea that you and me, the medical director, and you, the person we're meeting with, we can move these meetings if we need to.
Yes.
But they don't get deleted. And so if you're not available this afternoon, I will see you tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or if you're not available right after lunch, then I'll see you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to get people death by meetings, but this is a slippery slope. And again, it's usually done with the best of intentions.
Yeah.
But if people get the idea that communicating with you is essentially optional based on their availability, then you're never going to have access to them.
Yeah.
And so again, that's just a thing for me is if what you have to say is important, you need to send the message that's important by figuring out how to make these meetings happen. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. And it's very contingent upon the system that you're running in the specific hospital and your scheduling and things like that. But do not let it be something that, that everybody, kind of takes seriously, but not really.
Yeah, I love that. And so when you're meeting with them, my last thing would be figure out how to make this safe for them and then let them have fun. And what I mean by that is I'll offer an alternative perspective, because I think a lot of people, the question is being asked because people are worried, they're fearful, they're nervous, they're, all of those emotions. And let's take a second and think about what could be possible. And so having uniquely experienced both sides of the coin here, what I would say is excellent clinicians matter across veterinary medicine. And I will argue, it's a hill I will die on, that excellent clinicians matter across the team, matter more, not less, in a corporate structure or a big practice, because when we have standards, when we have systems, when we have process, we need exceptional clinicians because we need the ability to stand out in the crowd. Otherwise, it's just a checklist. We're just another McDonald's in the sea of millions, right? And so the clinical excellence doesn't have to disappear in corporate structure. And I think that's how a lot of people in veterinary medicine, in my experience and conversations, view it, is that you're just going to become a cog in the wheel and everything that is unique about you is going to go away. And I would make the argument as a leader that if you really want to Jedi mind trick this, adopt the mindset that being an excellent clinician in a corporate structure means that you have superpowers. And so if we think about it from that perspective, and you as a leader think about how you can invite them into the conversation, find ways to honor the legacy knowledge and their practice individuality, even if it has to change, think about how you can invite them into the conversation, whether it's with other doctors, advising on cases, pairing them with new grads that might exist in another location because they are a tenured, experienced vet, having them participate in advisory boards. There are lots of things that happen in a bigger practice level, corporate or independent, that people aren't aware of. Training sessions, building out systems, protocols. There's tons of opportunity that exist in that structure that are a good thing and provide career growth and pathing that isn't necessarily available in small single location practices. And so lean into the good. And if you think about it from that perspective, I think you would be hard pressed to find that you can't find some positivity and you can't get some excitement happening, but you got to inspire them to want it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, thanks for talking through this with me, Stephanie.
This one was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to flex these muscles
I know.
in public.
I know. I love
so
this. I love this one. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, gang. Take care. And that's what we got. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Again, it was a neat episode. It's something different than what we usually get to talk about. Yeah, I think that there's some people out there who maybe don't get to hear a lot of conversations like this, and they probably need to, or they would really like to. Yeah, it's good to talk about changing veterinary landscape stuff, and that's kind of what this is. So anyway, guys, take care of yourselves, everybody. I'll talk to you later on. Bye.